Jake Morrison never thought he would save an alien world. The young Marine from Texas had joined the Earth Defense Force to protect his home planet, not to fight wars in distant galaxies. But here he was, standing on the bridge of the human warship, Liberty, watching the final battle against the Vorthak invasion fleet unfold in the space above the Zephyrian capital world. The Vorthak had been terrorizing the Zephyrian Empire for 30 years. These dark creatures with their twisted metal ships had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved millions of beings. The proud reptilian Zephyrians had fought bravely but were losing badly when humanity arrived as part of the Galactic Alliance. Jake had started as just another soldier, but his quick thinking and fearless leadership had caught the attention of his commanders. While other humans relied on superior technology and firepower, Jake understood something different. He saw patterns in enemy movements and found weaknesses where others saw only strength. During the siege of Zephyr Prime, Jake had noticed that the Vorthak ships moved in predictable formations. They were powerful but inflexible, like a hammer that could only strike straight down. Jake proposed using the asteroid field near the planet as cover, something the rigid Vorthak tactical doctrine could not adapt to quickly. The plan was risky. Human ships would hide among the floating rocks and strike at the enemy flanks, while Zephyrian forces attacked head-on. Many commanders thought it was too dangerous, but Admiral Lisa Grant trusted Jake's instincts. She gave him command of a mixed squadron of human and alien vessels. The battle had been fierce. Vorthak plasma cannons turned asteroids into glowing dust while human missiles streaked through the debris field like deadly shooting stars. Jake coordinated the attack from his fighter, dodging enemy fire while directing his ships to strike at exactly the right moments. The breakthrough came when Jake realized the Vorthak command ship was trying to retreat to a safe distance. Instead of letting it escape, he led a desperate charge straight through the enemy formation. His fighter took heavy damage, but he managed to plant a tactical nuclear device on the command ship's hull before ejecting. The explosion crippled the Vorthak fleet's coordination. Without their central command, the enemy ships began to retreat in disorder. The siege of Zephyr Prime was broken, and the Vorthak invasion collapsed within days. Now Jake stood in the golden throne room of the Zephyrian Emperor, still wearing his battle-damaged uniform. The walls were covered with beautiful carvings that told the history of the reptilian species, and sunlight streamed through crystal windows high above. Hundreds of Zephyrian nobles in colorful robes watched as Emperor Thaxion himself approached. The Emperor was an impressive figure, nearly 8 feet tall with golden scales that seemed to glow in the light. His voice was deep and formal as he spoke. "Captain Morrison, you have saved our world and our people. The debt we owe to humanity and to you personally can never be fully repaid. Name your reward, and if it is within my power to grant, it shall be yours." Jake felt uncomfortable with all the attention. He had just been doing his job, following his training and instincts. But he understood that this ceremony was important to the Zephyrians and their sense of honor. "I ask for nothing more than continued friendship between our peoples, Your Majesty," Jake replied. The Emperor smiled, showing rows of sharp white teeth. "Your humility honors you, but I insist you accept something for your service. Perhaps you would consider marriage to one of my daughters. They are all accomplished princesses who would bring great honor to your name." The court began to murmur with excitement. Marriage to a Zephyrian princess would create a powerful bond between the two species and give Jake incredible status in the galactic community. 7 young Zephyrian females stepped forward, each wearing elaborate jewelry and silk robes. Jake could see that they were all beautiful by their species' standards, with bright golden or silver scales and graceful movements. The crowd's attention focused on Princess Valara, the eldest daughter. She was stunning, with scales that seemed to shimmer like liquid gold and intelligent green eyes. She had trained as a diplomat and was known throughout the galaxy for her skill in negotiations. Everyone expected Jake to choose her, but Jake's eyes were drawn to the youngest princess, who stood slightly apart from her sisters. Princess Nyx was smaller than the others, with pale silver scales that seemed almost white in certain light. She looked nervous and kept her gaze fixed on the floor. The other nobles barely glanced at her. Something about her reminded Jake of his younger sister back on Earth, who had always been shy and overlooked despite being incredibly smart. There was something in Nyx's posture that spoke to him, a quiet strength that others seemed to miss. "I choose Princess Nyx," Jake said clearly. The throne room fell completely silent. Then whispers began to spread through the crowd like ripples on a pond. Jake heard fragments of conversation in the Zephyrian language, and while he did not understand all the words, the tone was clear. They thought he had made a foolish choice. Princess Nyx looked up in shock, her large eyes wide with disbelief. Her sisters seemed equally surprised, and Jake could see a mix of relief and pity on their faces. Emperor Thaxion raised his hand for silence. "You have made your choice, Captain Morrison. Princess Nyx will be honored to accept your proposal, I am certain." He looked at his youngest daughter with an expression that seemed both proud and worried. Princess Nyx stepped forward on shaking legs. I would be honored to accept," she said in a voice so quiet that Jake had to strain to hear her. As the ceremony continued around them, Jake noticed that Nyx kept glancing at him with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. She clearly could not understand why he had chosen her over her more accomplished sisters. Later, as the celebration feast began, Jake found himself seated next to his new bride-to-be. The other guests were polite but clearly puzzled by his choice. Some seemed to think he had acted out of pity, while others whispered that he simply did not understand Zephyrian culture. "Why did you choose me?" Nyx asked quietly, as servants brought them plates of exotic foods. Jake looked at her thoughtfully. "Sometimes the most valuable things are the ones that others overlook," he said. "I have a feeling there's more to you than anyone realizes." Princess Nyx stared at him with an expression of wonder, as if no one had ever spoken to her that way before. And perhaps Jake realized no one ever had. The days following the engagement ceremony passed quickly for Jake Morrison. He spent his mornings attending briefings about Zephyrian culture and customs, learning the proper way to address nobles and understanding the complex marriage traditions of the reptilian species. His afternoons were devoted to spending time with Princess Nyx, getting to know the woman who would soon become his wife. Their first private meeting took place in the palace gardens, a beautiful space filled with crystalline trees that chimed softly in the breeze. Nyx arrived wearing a simple blue dress instead of the elaborate robes she had worn at the ceremony. She seemed more relaxed away from the crowds and curious eyes of the court. "I must apologize for my sisters and the nobles," Nyx said as they walked along a path lined with glowing flowers. "They do not mean to be rude, but they find your choice difficult to understand." Jake smiled. "What about you? Do you find it difficult to understand?" Nyx was quiet for a long moment, her pale scales catching the light from the strange alien sun above them. "I have always been different from my family," she said finally. "They see it as a weakness, but I sometimes wonder if it might be something else." What kind of different? Jake asked gently. Nix glanced around to make sure they were alone, then stepped closer to Jake. "Promise me you will not think I am crazy," she whispered. "I promise." "I can sense things that others cannot," Nix said. "When I was a child, I could tell what people were feeling even when they tried to hide it. My tutors thought I was just very good at reading expressions, but it was more than that. I could feel their emotions like they were my own." Jake listened carefully, remembering his military training about different alien species and their abilities. Some races had natural telepathic gifts, though it was rare among Zephyrians. "It got stronger as I grew older," Nix continued. "Sometimes I can even catch glimpses of people's thoughts, especially when they have strong feelings. That is why I am so awkward at court gatherings. All those minds pressing against mine, all those emotions swirling around me. It becomes overwhelming." "That sounds like a gift, not a weakness," Jake said. Nix looked at him in surprise. "You truly believe that?" "Absolutely. In human military training, we learn to value any advantage we can get. Being able to sense what others are thinking or feeling could be incredibly valuable." They sat down on a bench beside a fountain that sparkled with different colors. Nick seemed to relax as she continued talking. "There are other things too," she said. "Sometimes I can make small objects move without touching them, especially when I am upset or frightened. Once I made all the lights in my room flicker just by thinking about it. My family thinks these are just accidents or tricks." Jake felt a growing excitement as he listened. What Nix described sounded like psychokinetic abilities, something that human scientists had theorized about but rarely documented. "Can you show me?" he asked. Nix looked nervous but nodded. She focused her attention on a small pebble near the fountain. At first, nothing happened. But then the stone began to tremble slightly. Slowly, it lifted off the ground and floated in the air for several seconds before dropping back down. "That's incredible," Jake said, and he meant it. "Have you ever tried to develop these abilities further?" "I have been afraid to," Nix admitted. "What if I lose control? What if I hurt someone? My family already thinks I am the weak one, the disappointment. If they knew about this, they might send me away entirely." Jake took her hand gently. "Nix, you're not weak or a disappointment. You have abilities that could help a lot of people, but you need proper training and support to develop them safely." Over the following days, Jake encouraged Nix to practice her abilities in private. He shared human techniques for meditation and mental focus that he had learned during his military service. To his amazement, Nix proved to be a quick learner. Her telepathic range increased, and she gained better control over her psychokinetic powers. She could now lift multiple objects at once and even manipulate simple electronic devices, but more importantly, she began to gain confidence in herself. "I had a strange dream last night," Nix told Jake one evening as they walked through the palace corridors. "I saw images of ancient Zephyrians with pale scales like mine. They were doing things that seemed impossible, bending space around themselves and communicating across vast distances." Jake felt a chill of excitement. Did the images seem familiar somehow? "Yes, like memories that did not belong to me," Nix said. "There was one figure in particular, a female warrior who could step between dimensions. She felt like family, like an ancestor I had never met but somehow knew." That night, Jake accessed the palace library's computer systems with Nix's help. They searched through ancient Zephyrian texts and historical records, looking for any mention of pale-scaled individuals with unusual abilities. What they found changed everything. The record spoke of a legendary bloodline called the Void Wardens, ancient Zephyrians who appeared once every 1,000 years. These individuals possessed incredible psychic powers and could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. They had served as guardians of the galaxy, protecting it from threats that came from beyond normal space. According to the texts, the last Void Warden had appeared over 900 years ago and had sacrificed herself to seal away a terrible enemy that threatened all life in the galaxy. The bloodline was thought to be extinct. "The timing is right," Jake said as they read through the old records. "If Void Wardens appear every 1,000 years and the last one died 900 years ago, then you could be the next one." Nick stared at the ancient writing with wide eyes. "But these are just legends, stories told to children. My family has always said that the old tales are not real." "Your family also said your abilities were just accidents," Jake pointed out. "Maybe they're wrong about the legends, too." As if to prove his point, Nix suddenly gasped and grabbed Jake's arm. Her eyes had turned completely white, and she was staring at something he could not see. "Ships," she whispered in a voice that did not sound like her own. "Dark ships with twisted metal hulls. They are coming back, bringing something worse with them. The seals are weakening, and the ancient enemy stirs in the void between worlds." The vision lasted only a few seconds, but when Nix's eyes returned to normal, she was trembling. "What did you see?" Jake asked urgently. "The Vorthak," Nix said. "They are regrouping somewhere in the outer rim, but they are not the real threat. They serve something else, something that exists in the spaces between dimensions. And that something is trying to break free." Jake felt a cold fear settle in his stomach. If Nix's vision was accurate, then the recent victory over the Vorthak had been just the beginning of a much larger conflict. "We need to tell your father and the military commanders," Jake said. Nix shook her head. "They will not believe us. They already think I am strange and unreliable. But you believe me, don't you?" Jake looked into her large, frightened eyes and saw not weakness but incredible strength waiting to be unleashed. "I believe you completely," he said, "and I think it's time we started preparing for whatever is coming." As they left the library together, neither of them noticed the ancient symbols carved into the walls beginning to glow with a faint, pulsing light. The bloodline of the Void Wardens was awakening, and the galaxy would never be the same. The glowing symbols in the palace library led Jake and Nix on a journey deeper into the ancient history of the Zephyrian Empire than anyone had ventured in centuries. The strange markings appeared to respond to Nix's presence, growing brighter. When she came near and forming patterns that seemed to guide them through forgotten passages beneath the royal palace. "I can feel something calling to me," Nix said, as they descended a spiral staircase that had been hidden behind a wall panel. The air grew cooler as they went deeper, and the walls changed from polished stone to rough-hewn rock that looked far older than the palace above. Jake carried a portable light unit, but they barely needed it. The symbols carved into the walls provided their own illumination, creating a path of soft blue light that led them onward. The deeper they went, the stronger Nix's abilities seemed to become. "How long do you think these tunnels have been here?" Jake asked as they passed through a chamber filled with crystalline formations. "Since the beginning," Nix replied, her voice carrying a strange certainty. "Before the current dynasty, before the great cities, before the Zephyrians even learned to travel between stars. This place is older than our recorded history." They emerged into a vast underground chamber that took Jake's breath away. The ceiling stretched high above them, supported by pillars carved with intricate designs that seemed to move in the shifting light. At the center of the chamber stood a circular platform surrounded by what looked like viewing screens made of some kind of crystal. As Nick stepped onto the platform, the screens flickered to life, displaying images that moved like ancient films. Jake watched in amazement as the history of the Void Wardens unfolded before them. The first images showed Zephyrians with pale scales like Nyx's, but these ancient beings seemed to glow with inner power. They moved through space without ships, traveling by folding reality around themselves. They could phase through solid matter, manipulate time, and communicate across impossible distances. "They were not just powerful," Nyx said, her eyes reflecting the light from the screens. "They were guardians, protectors of all life in this part of the galaxy." The images shifted to show a great war against creatures that seemed to be made of living darkness. These entities moved through space like a plague, consuming entire star systems and leaving nothing but empty void behind them. "The Devourers," Nyx whispered, though Jake had not heard that name before. Somehow she knew it, as if the knowledge was awakening in her mind along with her powers. The final battle was terrible to watch. Void Wardens threw themselves against the dark entities in a desperate attempt to stop their advance. One by one, the Guardians fell until only a few remained. The last group of Void Wardens gathered at what looked like a massive tear in space itself, a wound in reality through which the Devourers were pouring into normal space. The surviving Guardians joined hands and began to glow with brilliant light. The tear in space began to close, but Jake could see that it was costing them their lives. One by one, they faded away until only a single figure remained, a female Void Warden with scales exactly like Nyx's. She spoke words that the crystal screens could not capture, but somehow Jake understood their meaning. The final Guardian was creating a seal that would hold the Devourers back, but it would require constant maintenance. The seal would weaken over time, and eventually another Void Warden would need to renew it or find a permanent solution. The last image showed the dying Guardian encoding her memories and knowledge into the very stones of this chamber, creating a legacy that would guide her successor when the time came. As the screens went dark, Nyx swayed on her feet and Jake caught her before she could fall. Her eyes were glowing with the same light they had seen in the ancient images. "I remember," she said in a voice filled with wonder and terror. "Not my own memories, but hers. The last Guardian, Zephyra the Eternal. She was my ancestor, and she has been waiting for me across 900 years. Jake helped Nyx to sit on the edge of the platform while she recovered from the overwhelming influx of ancient knowledge. "What did you learn?" he asked gently. "The seals are failing," Nyx said. "Every time the Vorthak use their reality-bending weapons, they weaken the barriers between dimensions. They do not know what they are doing, but each battle brings the Devourers closer to breaking free. How long do we have?" Nyx closed her eyes, and Jake could see her accessing the inherited memories. "Months, perhaps a year at most. The Vorthak will continue their attacks thinking they are just using advanced technology, but they are actually tools of the Devourers, influenced from across dimensional barriers to weaken the seals." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "What can we do?" "I must complete the transformation," Nyx said. "The memories show me how, but it is dangerous. I will have to open my mind completely to the power of the Void Wardens, and there is a chance I might not survive the process." "There has to be another way," Jake said firmly. Nyx looked at him with sad eyes. Perhaps there is, but I cannot see it yet. The ancient knowledge is still awakening in my mind. I need time to understand everything that Zephyra left for me. Over the following days, they returned to the hidden chamber whenever they could slip away from their official duties. Each visit brought new revelations as more of Nyx's inherited memories surfaced. She learned that the Void Wardens had not been born with their powers, but had undergone a transformation process that connected them directly to the fundamental forces of the universe. The process was different for each individual, shaped by their personality and the specific threats they faced. Zephyra's transformation was driven by sacrifice, Nyx explained to Jake during one of their sessions in the chamber. She gave up her individual existence to become part of the seal itself. But the memories suggest that other Void Wardens found different paths. Meanwhile, reports were coming in from the Outer Rim that confirmed Nyx's visions. The Vorthak were, indeed, regrouping, and they had new weapons that defied all known laws of physics. Ships that could phase in and out of reality, weapons that aged their targets to dust in seconds, and shields that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Galactic Alliance was baffled. Their scientists could not explain how such technology was possible, and their military leaders were struggling to develop countermeasures against enemies that could ignore conventional physics. Jake knew they had to act soon. He began making discreet inquiries among the human military leadership, trying to find allies who might be willing to consider unconventional solutions to the growing threat. Admiral Lisa Grant proved to be their most valuable contact. The experienced officer had learned to trust Jake's instincts, and she was willing to listen when he explained the situation in broad terms without revealing the most sensitive details about Nyx's abilities. "You're telling me that our enemy has access to weapons that can manipulate reality itself," Grant said, during a private meeting in her quarters aboard the human flagship. "And you believe that Princess Nyx might have some insight into how to counter these weapons?" "That's correct, Admiral," Jake replied carefully. "She has access to ancient Zephyrian knowledge that might be relevant to our current situation." Grant studied him with sharp eyes. "Captain Morrison, I've learned to trust your judgment, but this sounds like something out of a science fiction novel. Are you absolutely certain about this information?" Jake thought about the crystal screens in the hidden chamber, the glowing symbols that responded to Nyx's presence, and the terrible visions of the Devourers consuming entire star systems. "I stake my career and my life on it, Admiral." "Then we'd better start making preparations," Grant said grimly. "Because intelligence reports suggest that the Vorthak will launch their next major offensive within the month." As Jake left the meeting, he knew that time was running out. Nyx would have to make her choice soon about the transformation process, and he would have to find a way to protect her during the dangerous procedure. The fate of the galaxy might well depend on the shy princess that everyone had dismissed as weak and unremarkable. But Jake had seen the power awakening in her, and he knew that Nyx was destined for something far greater than anyone could imagine. The Vorthak attack came earlier than anyone expected. Jake was awakened in the middle of the night by emergency alarms echoing throughout the palace. Red warning lights flashed in the corridors as he ran toward the command center, pulling on his uniform as he moved. "Report!" he called out as he entered the military coordination room where Admiral Grant and the Zephyrian commanders were gathered around a holographic display showing the space around their solar system. Vorthak fleet emerged from hyperspace 3 hours ago, Admiral Grant said grimly. "But these aren't the same ships we fought before, Jake. Look at this." The hologram showed enemy vessels that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. Sometimes they appeared solid and normal, but then they would fade to ghostly shadows before becoming solid again. Weapons fire from the Allied fleet passed right through them during their shadow phases. They're phasing between dimensions, General. Korvax, the Zephyrian military leader, said in disbelief. Our sensors can barely track them, and our weapons are almost useless. Jake watched the tactical display with growing dread. The Vorthak ships moved through space in impossible ways, appearing behind Allied vessels without warning and striking with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. One moment, a human destroyer was there, fully operational, and the next it was a twisted wreck aged to scrap metal in seconds. "Where is Princess Nyx?" Jake asked urgently. "In the hidden chamber," Admiral Grant replied. "She said she needed to prepare for something." "What did she mean by that?" Before Jake could answer, the palace shook as enemy fire struck the planetary shields. Through the windows, they could see the energy barriers that protected the capital city flickering under sustained bombardment. "The shields won't hold for long against those weapons," General Korvax said. "We need to evacuate the royal family and the government officials." Jake shook his head. "Running won't solve this. We need to fight back. But first I have to get to Nyx." He raced through the palace corridors, dodging falling debris as more enemy fire struck the shields. The hidden entrance to the ancient chamber was already open when he arrived, and he could see light emanating from the depths below. When Jake reached the central chamber, he found Nyx standing on the circular platform surrounded by swirling energy that made the air itself seem to ripple. Her pale scales were glowing with inner light, and her eyes had turned completely silver. "Nyx," he called out, but she seemed to be in a deep trance. "The transformation has begun," she said without turning to look at him. Her voice echoed strangely, as if it was coming from far away. "I can see them now, Jake. The Devourers are pressing against the dimensional barriers. Each time the Vorthak use their weapons, the seals weaken further." "Can you stop them?" Jake asked. "I have to try," Nyx replied. "But the process requires me to separate my consciousness from my physical body. I will be traveling in dimensions, beyond normal space and time. My body will be helpless here." Jake understood immediately. "I'll protect you. No matter what happens up there, nothing will reach you down here." Nyx finally turned to look at him, and Jake saw both love and terrible sadness in her glowing eyes. "If I succeed, I will be changed forever. I may not be the same person you fell in love with." "You'll still be you," Jake said firmly. "The brave, intelligent, amazing woman who saved my life by believing in herself." The energy around Nyx intensified, and Jake had to step back as reality itself seemed to bend around her. "I can see the path now," she said. "Zephyra's memories are guiding me, but I must forge my own way. The ancient guardian sacrificed herself to become part of the seal, but there might be another solution." "What kind of solution?" "Instead of replacing the seal, I could become a bridge between dimensions. A guardian who exists in multiple realities at once, able to hold back the Devourers while remaining connected to the physical world." The palace shook again as the enemy bombardment intensified. Through the chamber's ancient stone walls, Jake could hear the sounds of battle growing closer. "They've broken through the outer defenses," he said. "The Vorthak are landing ground forces." Nyx nodded, her body now almost completely surrounded by swirling energy. "They can sense what I am becoming. The Devourers are driving them to stop me before the transformation is complete." Jake activated his communication device and contacted Admiral Grant. "I need all available forces to converge on the palace. The enemy is going to try to reach the ancient chamber." "Copy that, Jake. We're falling back to defensive positions around the capital. But I have to warn you, these new Vorthak weapons are unlike anything we've faced. They can age our ships to scrap metal and phase through our shields like they don't exist. Just buy us time, Jake said. Princess Nyx is our only hope of stopping this. As he spoke, Jake could hear explosions getting closer. The Vorthak ground forces were fighting their way through the palace, and the defending troops were struggling against enemies who could phase in and out of reality. Nyx's transformation reached a critical stage. Her physical body became transparent, and Jake could see through her to the glowing platform beneath. At the same time, her consciousness was expanding beyond the confines of three-dimensional space. "I can see them," she whispered, her voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. "The Devourers. They are vast beyond imagination, beings of pure entropy that exist in the spaces between realities. They have been waiting so long to break free and consume everything." Jake drew his weapon as he heard footsteps in the tunnel leading to the chamber. The first Vorthak soldiers appeared at the entrance, their dark armor making them look like walking shadows. These creatures moved differently than before, jerking and twitching as if they were being controlled by something else. They are not truly alive anymore. Nyx's voice echoed around the chamber. The Devourers have infected them, turning them into extensions of their will. Jake opened fire on the advancing enemies, but his bullets passed right through them as they phased between dimensions. A moment later, they solidified and returned fire with weapons that seemed to tear holes in reality itself. The battle in the chamber was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. The Vorthak soldiers could become incorporeal at will, making them nearly impossible to hit. Their weapons fired beams of pure entropy that aged everything they touched, turning stone walls to dust and metal to rust. But Jake had advantages too. His human reflexes and training allowed him to predict their movements, and he quickly learned to fire at the spots where they would materialize rather than where they currently were. More importantly, Nyx's growing power was affecting the chamber itself. The ancient symbols on the walls blazed with light, and reality became fluid around them. Jake found that he could move faster than should have been possible, as if time itself was bending to help him. "The connection is almost complete," Nyx announced, her consciousness now spanning multiple dimensions simultaneously. "I can see the path to victory, but I need more time." Jake fought desperately to give her that time, using every trick of combat he had learned during his military career. He used the crystal formations as cover, turned the Vorthak's own phasing ability against them by predicting where they would appear, and gradually drove them back toward the entrance. But more enemies were coming. Through his communication device, Jake could hear Admiral Grant coordinating the evacuation of civilians as the Allied forces fell back before the Vorthak assault. "Jake, we can't hold them much longer," Grant's voice crackled through the static. "Whatever Princess Nyx is doing, she needs to do it fast." In the depths of the ancient chamber, surrounded by enemies that could manipulate reality itself, Jake Morrison prepared for the fight of his life. Everything depended on protecting Nyx during the final stage of her transformation, and he would not fail her now. As Nyx's consciousness traveled deeper into the dimensional void, she found herself in a place that existed beyond normal concepts of space and time. Here, the boundaries between thought and reality were thin, and the very fabric of existence could be shaped by will and understanding. She was not alone in this strange realm. Floating before her were the ghostly forms of the ancient Void Wardens, the guardians who had sacrificed themselves centuries ago to seal away the devourers. Their leader was the same female warrior Nyx had seen in her visions, Zephyra the Eternal. "You have come at last," Zephyra said, her voice carrying the weight of 900 years of vigilant watching. "We have held the barriers as long as we could, but our strength fades with each passing day." Nyx could see the strain on the ancient guardians. They had become part of the dimensional seal itself, using their life force to maintain the barriers that kept the devourers trapped in the void between realities. But that energy was nearly exhausted. "Show me what I must do," Nyx said. Zephyra gestured toward the far edge of their realm, where Nyx could see cracks spreading through what looked like a wall of pure light. Beyond those cracks, something vast and hungry moved in the darkness. Traditional path is sacrifice," Zephyra explained. "You would join us in maintaining the seal, adding your power to ours, and extending the barriers for another 1,000 years. But there is another way, one that has never been attempted." "What way is that?" "Instead of becoming part of the seal, you could become a living bridge between dimensions. A guardian who exists in multiple realities simultaneously, able to face the devourers directly while remaining connected to the physical universe." Nyx felt a chill of fear at the suggestion. "Has it ever been done before?" "Never," Zephyra admitted. "The risk is enormous. If you fail, the barriers will collapse completely, and the devourers will be free to consume everything. But if you succeed, you could end this threat permanently, instead of merely delaying it." In the physical realm, Jake was fighting for both, their lives. The Vorthak soldiers kept coming, more of them than he could possibly handle alone. His ammunition was running low, and exhaustion was making his movements slower and less precise.